Welcome to the Healthy Returns podcast here at Spiral Sun Ventures. My name is Margot Shapiro, and I'm a managing partner with Spiral Sun, which we like to say is the healthiest fund under the sun. Spiral Sun invests in better-for-you consumer brands built by exceptional entrepreneurs. This is the first in what we hope will be a series of conversations that are interesting to our family of investors and friends on topics related to healthy food and healthy lifestyles. We're shining a light on fresh perspectives, ideas, and trends, and we hope that you'll learn something new and take away something positive. Today, hosting with me is a director with the Spiral Sun team, Fabrice Braunrot, who is also an advisor to the general partners. Fabrice is a 34-year veteran of J.P. Morgan, retiring in 2018 as a vice chairman of the J.P. Morgan Private Bank. In addition to his Spiral Sun involvement, Fabrice has a health and wellness podcast called The Lies We've Been Fed, and he's launching a direct-to-consumer food brand, Four Things Bread. He's a board member of the Nutritional Science Initiative and serves on the advisory board of the Osher Integrative Medicine Group at Northwestern Hospital. And now I'm super excited to introduce our wonderful guest, Dr. Lucia Aronica. Dr. Aronica is a PhD and professor at Stanford University, lecturer at the Stanford Prevention and Research Center, and R&D lead for genomics at Metagenics, Inc., an education resource for healthcare providers. Her research investigates how food can affect the activity of our genes through a process called epigenetics, and how we can use this information to design personalized lifestyle interventions. Lucia is a board advisor for companies and nonprofit organizations in the precision health, wellness coaching, and medical education space. She serves as an editorial board member of international peer-reviewed nutrition science journals and has published research papers in top-ranked peer-reviewed journals, including Cell, Genes in Development, and the EMBO Journal. So we all share a common passion for food as medicine, and Fabrice and I are so grateful to have Dr. Aronica as our guest today to talk about what we really mean by the term keto.
That is a terrific lead into our conversation. And our listeners should appreciate the fact that while Dr. Aronica is incredibly well qualified and widely published, she's also one of the most user-friendly experts that you could meet. So she's going to be Lucia to us.
Welcome, Lucia. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you very much, Margot and Fabrice, for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Oh, it is our pleasure. I'm a Stanford alum, and such a pleasure to have you here. I'll also let everyone know that I recently took an online class from Lucia, which all of you can do as well, actually, and it is entitled Diet and Gene Expression. You are what you eat. And I can vouch for her being an amazing teacher with great passion for healthy living. And you'll all note that through her beautiful accent, of course, that Lucia is from Italy. So I just have to start this by asking you, how on earth did you come from a country that consumes more pasta per capita than anywhere else and end up focusing on low-carb diets?
Oh, yes. It has been an adventure of food and science. So, yes, I was born in Italy, where we are famous for eating pizza, pasta, and bread. And then I became fascinated with nutrition during my master studies in biotechnology. And then I studied epigenetics, which is the science of how the environment, including diet, can change the activity of our genes. And then during my PhD in Austria, Vienna, I started to experiment with a low carbohydrate diet just because it was something that was so different from what I had been practicing for so many years with my pasta-rich diet, and I was curious about experimenting with new nutritional interventions. And then, by doing so, I noticed incredible changes in my blood markers. My triglycerides went down, my HDL went up, and also some markers of immune health were positively changed. My lymphocyte to monocyte ratio, for example. And anyway, this fascination motivated me to apply my knowledge in epigenetics to my passion for nutrition and low carbohydrate nutrition. And so I decided then to come to Stanford and study how low carbohydrate diets can change our epigenetics, thus impacting our health and predisposition to disease.
One of the things that really impressed me about your work, Lucia, is how approachable and understandable you keep things in terms of avoiding acronyms and medical jargon. So thank you for that. A persistent problem comes up, whether you're in the food production business or you're just thinking about your own personal nutrition. And that is the industry's mania to put labels on everything. There is a tidal wave of overly simplified labels to sift through. We get hit with terms like organic, non-GMO, plant-based, vegetarian, vegan, keto, paleo, and the list goes on without any real explanation other than a marketing slogan. So I think there's probably more than a little bit of confusion out there. And if anyone can clear that up for us, I think it's you. We started the conversation talking about low carbohydrate and ketogenic diets. Could you give us a little definition of what exactly a, quote, keto diet means and how it came about? There has to be some history and interesting foundations to it.
Yes. I will try to keep things simple because, as you mentioned, I believe that knowledge is key to avoid confusion, and keeping things simple so help people understand better things that are so important, like what we eat. So a ketogenic diet, it's a diet that stimulates the production of ketone bodies. Ketone bodies are an alternative fuel to glucose, and they are absolutely necessary, essential for human beings to survive during periods of food scarcity. So actually, we as humans have gone in ketosis, which is the state, the biological state that we enter when we produce ketones. So humans have used ketosis for thousands of years during the evolutions, and using ketone bodies allowed humans to survive during a period of starvations. So when we restrict carbohydrates under 20 to 50 grams per day, a threshold that it really depends on the individual. So it varies from from person to person. When we do that for a prolonged period of time, that can be like more than 24 hours in general for most people, we stimulate the production of ketone bodies, which are basically miniature fatty acids that are produced by the breakdown of our own fat. And then they can be used as a fuel by our brain, unlike fatty acids, because they are small, they can cross the blood-brain barrier and feed our brain, and by other organs in our body. So basically, the ketosis is a backup system that allows our body to tap in our biggest energy reservoir, which is our fat tissue. So we can store more than 100,000 calories in our fat. Even for a lean person, we can store more than 100,000 calories in our fat tissue, whereas we can store only about 2,000 calories in our glycogen, so as glucose in our body. So you can see how important it is to be able to access to that energy reservoir that our fat tissue represents. And in order for doing that, we need to restrict carbohydrates, allow our body to produce ketone bodies, because then the ketone bodies, which are produced by our fat tissue, can feed all our organs, including our brain.
One thing I've heard is that babies are a fantastic example of people on a ketogenic diet. They're drinking a very high-fat food source from their mother's milk at a time when their brains and bodies are developing the most rapidly. So it could almost be seen as the original and maybe even most important diet. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. So it is true. Babies go into ketosis within 2 hours of not eating. And actually also athletes go into ketosis very easily. There is a physiological ketosis post-workout for athletes. So going into ketosis is a physiological mechanism. And in some individuals and babies, it occurs actually very quickly. And for newborns, as you mentioned, ketosis is actually essential to for survival and to promote the brain development. Newborns have a very, very low blood sugar. So it's probably about 39 milligram per deciliters, levels that, the individual will be in coma with such low levels. And the reason for that is that the newborns usually use primarily ketones to fuel their brain.
That's very, very cool. Okay, so now that we know what the term means, as your student, I know you're so good at explaining difficult concepts in simple ways, as Fabrice said. So I want to ask you about your specialty of epigenetics. You describe food not just as a fuel, but as a signaling mechanism to our genes. So why do people need to pay attention to this, and what should they focus on here regarding their diet?
Oh, yes. Epigenetics is my specialty, expertise, and passion. Epigenetics make us look at food from a different lens. It teaches us that food is not only calories, but also information. Food is the most powerful signal to our genes, and different nutrients in the food we eat send signals to enzymes in our cells that can write, erase epigenetic marks on our genes. These epigenetic marks work as a switch for genes. They can turn genes on and off. They are the software of our cells. You can think of our DNA as hardware and epigenetics as software, which is different in every single cell of our body. And that's why different cells in our body look different despite having the same hardware, the same DNA. Hair cells, eye cells look different from each other. They have the same hardware information, but a different software. And in the same way, people that have the same genetics, for example, identical twins, can look different from each other and develop different predisposition to disease based on their lifestyle, because food and other lifestyle factors are information, biological information. They send signals to those epigenetic enzymes and can change so the epigenetic marks on our genes and our epigenetic biography. This is a nice term I like to use because it reminds us that we can participate in our in the process of writing our biography, our health biography, by choosing the right lifestyle habits that affect the epigenetic marks on our genes and so our health.
I think it's fascinating when you talk about lifestyle sending signals to our enzymes and such. You always talk about various examples. I know you just brought up the twins, etc. But what about, I describe to people about honeybees. I always find this so fascinating. And I don't know why, but the reason, the honeybees with the queen bees and the worker bees.
Yes. There are many examples of the power of epigenetics, and honeybees and work bees are one of these examples. So honeybees and worker bees look very different from each other, and the worker bees are small and sterile, and the queen bees are they can lay eggs and are much larger. So despite that, queen bees and worker bees have actually the same DNA, the same genes. The difference is actually the software, their epigenetic program, which is programmed during the development of the larvae. So only queen bee larvae are fed with royal jelly, which is a substance that is actually produced by the worker bees and triggers an epigenetic program that activates some genes that are necessary to foster the development, the physiological development of queens. So basically, royal jelly turns on the queen bee specific genes and turns off the worker bee specific genes. And this is a powerful example how diet can shape our epigenetics, thereby affecting our physiology, the way we look and perform and live.
Can I ask a question about that? Because I think when we hear about signals being given, we might think about that happening in a very immediate way. But one of the things that I've experienced is that when you want to become a flexibly fueled person, you need to go through a period of adaptation where important internal signals are being sent on a more consistent basis, and that it might take several weeks of exposure to ketone signaling for you to be able to use them properly. Can you talk a little bit about that? In particular, the fact that we're not just a machine where you flip the switch and suddenly it all happens.
Oh yes, this is very true. So actually, ketones are an example. They work both as a signaling molecule that has been shown actually to have epigenetic effects, and as a fuel. And these are actually two sides of the same coins, because many epigenetic compounds are actually metabolites in our body. So basically, there is a very tight relationship between our metabolism, what we eat, and then epigenetics. And as you mentioned, there are different speeds by which these processes occur in our body. There are some effects that are actually quick, even some epigenetic effects, so that there are quick effects and longer effects. But then in terms of becoming fat burning machine that really effectively uses ketones, this is a process called keto adaptation. adaptation. And it can take anyway from 6 weeks to even longer, depending on our baseline diet. And it's a process that involves many organs. So the way we break down fats in our cells and mitochondria, and the way we produce and uptake ketones in our body and excrete them. So it's a process that happens at very physiological levels and in different organs. And yes, it can take a long time. And this is the reason why, for example, although a ketogenic diet can be extremely useful for endurance athlete, because it allows athletes to tap into their fat tissue as an energy source during a race. So despite that, athletes that wants to use a ketogenic diet to boost their performance need to prepare to start a ketogenic program at least 6 weeks before a competition, or they will not actually be able to boost their performance. And this is where it is so tricky also to conduct study that demonstrate, performance benefit of a ketogenic diet, or even metabolic benefits, because now we see that the clinical interventions that are clearly demonstrating benefits of the ketogenic diet are those that in which the participants followed the diet for a longer period of time, more than 6 months. So yes, so I appreciate you brought up this important point.
Yes. I just want people to understand that patience is required and that there are ways to make that period of the keto adaptation more comfortable, and that people shouldn't be dissuaded by some of the changes that happen when you're going through that adaptation. I would say personally that it is life-changing and absolutely worth doing. But if you're going to do it, get some good information along the way about the adaptation process. There are lots of sources for that.
So now we've learned that your DNA isn't your destiny, and food isn't only calories, but it's information. But how do we have people use the term keto? There's a lot of confusion about whether it's a fad. So how should one think about it in their own personal nutritional practice? Like, what foods should they eat? And for instance, should people follow this diet every day? I know that there's this adaptation period, but is it healthy long term? Can you give your body a chance to be in this state just sometimes? And would that be beneficial? And then a side question, people will probably want to know, how many different kinds of keto diets are there? Can vegetarians also follow, this type of thing?
Wow, yes, Margot, these are all very interesting questions. I will start you ask whether keto is a fad or not. I think for any diet, there is a good way and a bad way of doing any diet. A Mediterranean diet that focuses only on pasta and pizza is a bad Mediterranean diet, and a vegan diet that is only cookies and processed soy product is also not probably the best way to go. And even a ketogenic diet in which people don't eat quality fats and don't maximize the consumption of green leafy vegetables, low carbohydrate vegetables, can be difficult to sustain and also possibly be unhealthy because of restricting access to important nutrients and fiber that promote an healthy microbiome. So quality is always important, even for a ketogenic diet. And do you have to follow this every day? Probably not. It depends on your goal. There are some people that choose to follow a ketogenic diet for a therapeutic goal that can be cancer, or a metabolic condition in which they need to be in sustained ketosis. For example, glycogen disease disorders. For these people, probably they want to be always in ketosis. Other people that want just to benefit from the metabolic outcomes, benefits of going into ketosis, or becoming able to switch from glucose to ketones as a fuel from time to time. Well, that is also possible, and it's actually probably what I usually do. I have a very low carbohydrate diet. I don't count how many carbohydrates I eat every day. I'm probably in ketosis most of the time, but ketosis is not my goal. I know it's just a readout of a dietary pattern that is nutrient dense. It focuses on low carbohydrate vegetables, and by doing so, it naturally fosters ketosis. It naturally allows me to use ketones or glucose as necessary. And so again, there is not one way of doing a ketogenic diet. There are even athletes that experiment with a cyclic ketogenic diet, in which they have only 5 days of ketogenic diets every week and 2 days of cheat days to refill their glycogen, their muscles. So there are so many ways. And I think you also asked about the possibility of being a vegetarian or vegan and going on a keto diet. Of course, yes, the ketogenic diet is just a diet that reduces carbohydrates to 20 to 50 grams per day. It's simple. Now, of course, it's more difficult if you are a vegetarian and vegan, because you add to the restriction of a ketogenic diet those of being a vegetarian and vegan. But it's absolutely possible. There are so many healthy fats that vegetarian and vegan consumes, including olive oil, avocados, nuts, and low carbohydrate vegetables. So I really don't see why. So the ketogenic diet is not only about butter and meat. Actually, it is becoming more and more popular, a variant of the ketogenic diet called the Mediterranean ketogenic diet that shows potential for people with Alzheimer's disease who carry the ApoE4 variant. So this is a genetic variant that apparently predisposes people to have adverse lipid outcomes and cognitive outcomes when they eat too much saturated fat. So on the other side, Alzheimer's patients can benefit from producing ketones because this becomes an alternative fuel for the brain and bypasses like a problem, a defect in glucose metabolism that many Alzheimer's patients have. So by doing a ketogenic diet that focuses on unsaturated fats, olive oil, avocado, nuts, which is also referred as to Mediterranean ketogenic diet, these ApoE4 carriers with Alzheimer's disease see significant improvements in their cognitive performance.
That's super interesting. And I know that you have been doing a lot of work on personalized nutrition based on people's unique characteristics, like these types of things. Is there anything more you want to say about what you're learning and what you've learned recently, and maybe even the difference in how males and females handle these different diets?
Oh yes, this is a long conversation. I actually recently published a paper with Professor Jeff Folek, Dominic D'Agostino, and Angela Poff on the genetic variants that can modify the response to a ketogenic diet. I think the main message of the paper is that there are only a few genetic variants that have been demonstrated in clinical studies to affect the response to ketogenic diets. Genes can affect the way our body produces ketones, breaks down ketones, and utilizes ketones. For example, some people may have actually very high ketone levels, but this is not because it's not always a good sign. It might be that they don't break down and use ketones effectively. And then there are other people, I think 25% of people who experience significant increases in LDL when going on a ketogenic diet. Now, we don't know whether this is a concern because there is research showing that high LDL in a context of a low carbohydrate diet may not be a concern. But anyway, these individuals who are called high responders. So this doesn't mean that having high LDL is a risk factor for you. However, yes, there are some genetic variants that can predispose you to produce more LDL, and your physician may decide to have you look at other risk factors for cardiovascular disease, including family history, LDL particle number, coronary artery calcium score. And then based on all these additional risk factors, advise you whether you may consider quitting with keto or adopting a modified version of a ketogenic diet in which you reduce the saturated fat and the meat consumption in order to lower your LDL, which might become a risk factor for some people that have other cardiovascular risk factors, even in the context perhaps of a low carbohydrate diet.
I'm glad you said that. When I went on a low carbohydrate way of living, which I've been on for many years now, so many things got better for me. Blood pressure improved, triglycerides improved, HDL improved, weight improved, and my inflammation indicators improved. The only thing that went in the, and I'm using air quotes here, wrong direction was my LDL. And I had to ask myself, if I'm a betting man and I see 9 things improve and 1 thing go wrong, maybe it's the science behind the 1 thing that's gone wrong that needs to be questioned or at least be looked into very carefully. So I would recommend that people who try this, but do see an LDL increase, particularly if you're a lean athletic person, it may not be the terrible signal you think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not only are we bombarded with these names of diets and ways of affecting our lifestyle, but we're also bombarded with studies. I've heard you say some very interesting things about how we as consumers of information should think about studies. Margot touched on it a little bit where she mentioned that there may be some interesting gender differences. I've seen some very useful things that you've put out about how to think about studies for men and women differently. Could you talk about that for just a minute?
Yes. I think Margot was referring to another recent study we did investigating how men and women follow and respond to a low carbohydrate versus a low fat diet. So this was a study in 600 men and women who were randomized to either a low carbohydrate diet or a low fat diet within the Stanford Diet Fit study by Professor Christopher Gardner. Both diets were actually focused on whole foods, so they were both low carb compared to the standard American diet. Anyway, what we found is that if you look at the population of men and women together, there was no difference in weight loss between the low carb and low fat arm. However, when you look at men and women individually, so you see that actually women didn't stick to the diet, to the low carb diet, as well as men. And despite that, they lost comparable amount of weight on both low carb and low fat. Whereas the men who did stick to the low carb and low fat diet in a similar way, then they lost actually more weight on the low carbohydrate diet. So basically, our study indicates that with the comparable, with comparable compliance to the diet, actually, it might be easier for people to lose weight on a low carbohydrate diet. It also indicates that women may have a difficult time sticking to a low carbohydrate diet, which is also high in fat. And this is perhaps, the women are a target of low fat marketing. So all the low fat yogurts in the supermarket are pink. And this is not a coincidence. So there are some interesting behavioral implications, and I think clinicians may advise female patients that a low carbohydrate diet can actually be a very effective way of losing weight, perhaps even less effort compared to a low-fat diet, but they just need to embrace to lose their fear of fats and concern about eating high fat, and embrace in order to embrace a low-carb lifestyle.
We have a podcast episode which is all about confronting nutritional misconceptions. And one of the biggest lies out there is that fat makes you fat. And I think you just explained it extremely well. Embrace good fats.
But I can see how women, it's just been beaten into our brains that fat is bad. And you could see the men in people's families are much more willing to sit down and, slather on all kinds of butter and have big porterhouse steaks and things like that. I don't know. It's very interesting, though, the compliance part of the study.
While we're on the subject of being manipulated by packaging, and I love your observation that even the color coding of yogurt is a subliminal signal sent by marketers, could you talk to us a little bit about how to approach packaged foods? I think you probably live a wonderfully unprocessed life, as many of us try to, but there are times when you're going to need to buy something from the center of the store. And frankly, at Spiral Sun, we aim to invest in companies that produce products that we think are way better than most in that regard. How do you suggest people approach that? And what do you look for in that world?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. Yes, I think as much as I'm a promoter of fresh food, I also understand that convenience is important. And so I encourage people to look for products that are based on whole foods ingredients, and that even your grandmother could read the ingredients and understand them. So I think this is an easy tip I can give. Also, I think we need to put more money and efforts in choosing and buying our packaged foods. What I mean is that convenience, I agree that convenience in terms of time is great. We cannot be hunter and gatherer in our busy life and provide our own food. So packaged food can be a convenient way to go. On the other side, we want to reproduce that, the challenge of having to hunter-gather your food, whether we have lost in our society, by really thinking I think by really getting educated around the food we eat, and so that we become able to make informed decisions. And I think a packaged food that can reproduce this experience by providing consumers information about how the food is obtained and sourced, and can engage them in their own decision, can be a powerful way to marry convenience and also health in these packaged foods solutions.
Yes, and I just want to say that we at Spiral Sun, I'll put in a plug for us. We're so thoughtful about this regarding the brands that we invest in. For example, we look at simple ingredient lists and low carb products, even for dogs, which is so interesting. People are humanizing their dogs, and it's very important for them too to be low carb and low sugar sodas and whole foods and such. So we definitely are with that program, want to get everybody educated to look more at the packaging, because we feel that health is wealth, and for your investments as well. So agree that convenience, especially during this time that we've had this year during COVID, we're all looking in our pantries and for what we can get, the best nutrition that we can get off the shelf or online. So, Fabrice, where should we go from here? Maybe we want to ask.
I think we should ask for a little bit of a glimpse into the future. I think that might be a good thing to do just in a very general sense. Where do you see the science going? I think you're an optimist about where we're going and the effect that might have on us in the food system.
Yes, I am an optimist, and I have to say that science has made impressive advances in the past decades about how food can change and shape our biology. And also, I'm seeing more and more people willing to learn about this. So I really believe that people will be more open to use science to live a healthier, happier life. And I hope that the food industry will see that. And then they hopefully they will change their products and messaging to target a new audience that is clearly emerging, of people that value their health and the role that science and food can play in improving their quality of life, health span, and longevity.
Well, thank you so much, Lucia, for helping us debunk the myth and learn more about ketosis and debunking that it's maybe not such a good state to be in, and rather that it's a really essential kind of natural state for us to be in. And we're very, very appreciative of your time today. And I want to close by asking, how can people best follow you? I know that you have a great website and a YouTube channel, so that they can hear more about the amazing work that you're doing.
Yes, it's true. I'm not a social media star, but I try to, because I believe in communication and education, I try to upload my interviews and videos on my YouTube channel or share them on my Facebook and Instagram pages. I also have a website, draronica.com, where I list my Stanford courses. So this is more like a personal website. I don't have a business. I'm just a scientist, academic, busy in doing research and educating people and spreading the love and knowledge about food and health.
Well, we are so glad that you're here and that you do all of that. Thank you again so much for taking the time to be with us. I know we've just scratched the surface basically on all of your knowledge in this area and many other areas. So I know people will sign on to your sites and social media and your classes too. learn a lot more. There's a lot to learn there. So take care, be well, and good luck in everything.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. It has been a pleasure.
Our pleasure as well. Take care.